Hey y'all, welcome back to another Mask Monday. We have another quick tip for you, so we're just gonna jump right in. So we've got another quick tip for you today. This is gonna be on just the different consistencies to mix your paint and ink and stuff like that. First, I'm gonna explain how to dilute the latex-based paint to spray nice out of the airbrush. From that, we'll move on to just regular acrylic paints and what you can dilute the acrylic paints with. And then we'll do the FW ink and the different consistencies you can do the FW ink. Let's start with latex-based paint. If you're just doing like a really thick base coat, you don't need to dilute this at all. You can just go right from the bottle into the cup and it will work, but you're gonna have more issues with clogging. A big thing is it's not gonna go as far. Like you'll eat through your paint a lot faster if you're just filling up the cup with straight paint. What a lot of people say is that it should be like a milky consistency. I go a little thicker than milky, and so I like to start by putting in the paint, general amount, distilled water, and I'll just spray that in. And the way I always kind of start to see is I'll pick it up and I'll just drip it, and I'll see kind of how easily it drips off. This is about milky. This is actually maybe slightly thinner than I would like it. You can see it running down pretty quickly on here, and it goes up here and it runs down pretty quickly. So yeah, that's the consistency for the latex paint. Another way that you could do the base coats, you could just put the paint right in here and then just give it a quick little spritz in there, and then that'll help just kind of pull the paint through. That's what I do if I'm just doing black or just doing white, but almost always I'm mixing the color to get to a specific color that I want. So that's the latex paint. That's pretty simple, little thicker than milky. I guess that's just my answer. Now I'm gonna get over to the acrylic paints. The acrylic paint that I use most often is this Old Bone White. It's made by Kratex Colors, and it's Tim Gore's Bloodlines, and I use it for eyes and teeth really often. But you can also just use distilled water. You can also use alcohol when you're dealing with acrylic paints. Big reason why you don't want to use alcohol with the latex paints is it will clump it up. It doesn't really clump it up as bad with just regular acrylic paint. There's a lot of different ways to mix this. So I'll start with just a little bit of distilled water. Yeah, that's about the same consistency as the latex that I just mixed up. And that would be good for spraying like a pretty opaque version of this color. But again, if I want to thin it out a little bit, then I can just put some more distilled water in there. Again, you can do a little alcohol if you want. That'll thin it out more than the water, but that, as you can see, is pretty thin now. It's really pretty runny. And you can just keep going and make it thinner and thinner and thinner. And just like the more you thin it out, kind of the more like translucent it'll be. So that's acrylic paint. Ink, like I said, there's a lot of different consistencies that like I use all the time. But what I typically always use for diluting ink is alcohol. You can use distilled water because the ink is actually water-based, and so that works, but then like alcohol just thins it out a lot more. This is basically 50-50. This is like 50% ink, 50% alcohol, and that's like the most typical consistency for me with the FW ink. So if I wanted to do a rub out, so this is gonna be a lot thinner. It's pretty much like 2 ounces per one whole 32 ounce container of alcohol. And so I put just straight up 70% alcohol up to here, and then 1 bottle of this, and that gives you a really nice consistency. If you do the whole bottle, obviously it'll be 2 bottles worth of the FW ink. And if you're not gonna make a whole bunch like this, then you wanna kinda learn how to mix a little bit. So like this is how much I mixed earlier. That is pretty thin, but it's not like completely like translucent. That is probably about as thick as water. Or really it's still probably thicker than water, but really what you want to do is you want to be pushing it up onto the walls of the cup and seeing how it sticks. You can dilute this to the point where you literally will push it up onto the wall and it'll just roll back and you won't even have any color or anything on there. You don't want that. If you're doing the rub out, you definitely want it to stick and be thick enough to where it stays on the wall of the cup, but it's running down. Yep, so that's going to be the consistency for a rub out. If you wanted to speckle, like for skin tone, you wanted to like go in with the brush and put like all these speckles all over, which people do a lot. You're gonna want this to be very, very thin. And now you'll probably see it'll run up on the wall and just fall right off, and it's just basically disappearing. It's also going to be kind of hard to see a lot of the time when you're doing this speckling. It goes up on the wall and then it literally just drains and it's almost completely clear. And that's if I was going to take a chip brush or something and put it in there and like scrape the bristles to create like a speckling effect on the mask. With the ink, you can spray straight up just FW ink, or you can mix in some alcohol to that, and I almost always mix a little bit of alcohol because again, the FW ink is very expensive. I think it's like $8 for like a little ounce of it. So that you want to spread that out as much as possible. So I say dilute it with some alcohol just to spread it out a little further. But I think that about covers diluting paints kind of specific to mask making. Obviously there's a million other things you can do, but for mask making and mask customization and stuff like that, these ratios and these consistencies kind of tend to work for me. So that's going to do it for this week's Mask Monday. Visit us at nightmaretoys.com, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.